They are not trying to destroy you. If they wanted an open conflict, they would have chosen force. What they seek is something far more effective: access to your feelings, your reactions, your timing, your inner stability. Machiavelli warned that the greatest threat is not the enemy who attacks, but the enemy who watches. Observation turns your actions into strategy. Once your reactions are exposed, your future moves stop being truly yours. Most people assume enemies act out of hatred. That assumption blinds them. Enemies act out of calculation. They provoke not to fight, but to measure. They delay not out of hesitation, but to see how quickly you lose composure. They remain silent, not due to weakness, but because they want to see how much agitation you produce. In Machiavellian thought, every emotional response is a revelation. It exposes position, insecurity, and desire for control. Power is lost the moment you become readable. The moment your anger is predictable, your explanations arrive on schedule, and your emotions follow expected patterns, you stop being a threat. Machiavelli understood that people are not ruled by force alone, but by expectation. When an opponent knows your next move, resistance is unnecessary. They simply nudge you toward outcomes you believe you chose. This is why many people lose without ever realizing they were in a game. They think reacting shows strength, defending proves innocence, speaking shows confidence. In reality, reacting puts you inside someone else's rhythm. Defending accepts their framework. Speaking gives them insight. Machiavelli wrote that authority belongs to those who cannot be easily read. Ambiguity is not confusion, it is protection. This message is not about motivation or self-belief. It is about strategic invisibility. It is about cutting off emotional access so completely that your enemies must operate blindly. When feedback disappears, certainty collapses. When certainty collapses, mistakes follow. The enemy escalates not because you threaten them, but because they can no longer predict you. Machiavelli never suggested seeking love or fairness in power struggles. He emphasized control of perception, distance from impulse, and mastery of timing. Those who rush to clarify lose advantage. Those who crave resolution surrender leverage. A mind that demands to be understood is easy to command. A mind that withholds becomes ungovernable. By the end of this message, you will not feel motivated. You will feel insulated. You will grasp how enemies test emotional boundaries, how silence exerts pressure, how delay reshapes hierarchy, and why denying closure unsettles even confident opponents. This is not about winning debates or dominating others. It is about becoming strategically unreachable. I want you to leave this affirmation in the comments before we go further. I am unreadable. Enemies target emotional influence, not direct combat. They rarely move toward open collision because force is costly. It exposes intent, triggers resistance, and draws consequences. Machiavelli observed that clever opponents prefer guidance over impact. They aim to shape behavior without taking responsibility. Emotional access allows this silently. Once inside your emotional space, they no longer need to oppose you. They can steer you. The first goal is never victory, it is permission. Permission to disturb your inner balance, influence your mood, and shape your choices subtly. Provocation is the entry point. A comment, a delay, a gesture, a withdrawal. Each tests whether it can disrupt your internal order. Once you respond emotionally, the door opens. From that point, they adjust. Hierarchy is formed not just through dominance, but through control of emotional flow. The one who sets the emotional tone defines the structure of interaction. When you become irritated, defensive, rushed, or eager to clarify, you act inside someone else's plan. Machiavelli knew influence is strongest when the influenced believes they act freely. Most people misread provocation. They assume it aims to insult. It does not. Its goal is information. Emotional spikes reveal weaknesses, calm reveals expectations, and sudden reactions expose attachment. From these, a behavioral map is formed. Once mapped, manipulation becomes effortless. No repeated pressure is needed. The opponent presses where response is guaranteed. Machiavelli said, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceits. Emotional needs create obedience. Desire for respect, understanding, or justification becomes leverage. Visible needs can be exploited without confrontation. The enemy no longer fights you, they stimulate the right response internally. Control is rarely loud. It works through rhythm: who speaks first, who waits, who hurries, who explains, who reacts. These shifts determine rank. Losing emotional balance first means taking a lower position unknowingly. From that point, interactions are no longer equal. One probes, the other adjusts. One leads, the other follows. Emotional discipline is not restraint, it is defense. Inaccessible emotions remove leverage. Without leverage, the enemy must act openly or retreat. Both reveal them. Machiavelli advised rulers to avoid dependency on emotional exchange, as dependence invites control. Independence, even in silence, creates uncertainty. Once you grasp that enemies seek emotional authority, not combat, behavior changes. You stop reacting to irritation, stop explaining assumptions, stop justifying motives. Instead, you observe. You allow pressure to exist without easing it. The enemy, deprived of feedback, doubts their position. Anxiety replaces confidence. Initiative falters. Emotional neutrality is not passivity, it is refusal. Refusal to be positioned, to be measured, to provide information. When emotions are unavailable, strategic control collapses. The enemy interact, not with a person but with a wall. Now, leave this affirmation in the comments: my emotions are inaccessible. Refuse reaction to break their leverage. Reaction is never neutral. Responding surrenders initiative. Machiavelli knew power belongs to the one who acts by choice, not impulse. Reaction places you in a structure you did not design. It forces movement under terms set before you knew the game began. Every response signals relevance. Tone reveals priority. Speed shows urgency, and words reveal intent. Silence after provocation shows strength. Speech reveals shape. Enemies study these signals. They reduce uncertainty. Uncertainty threatens them. Clarity feels safe. Reacting simplifies their decisions, shortens their options, and turns complexity into predictability. The first responder is weaker. This is structural, not theoretical. Response implies adjustment. Adjustment implies dependence. True leadership does not explain itself instantly. Authority does not rush to justify. Those who hurry to defend appear guilty, even when innocent. Balance is command's foundation. Most believe reaction shows confidence. In truth, it exposes. Exposure gives access. Access gives control. Knowing how to elicit responses lets the enemy steer, exhaust, and redirect you. Reaction hands them a steering wheel. From then on, you navigate by correction, not choice. Refusing to react breaks this system. With no response, the enemy lacks confirmation. Their assumptions remain untested. Press sous floats without landing. This absence discomforts them, as control demands feedback. Without feedback, certainty fades. The enemy second-guesses timing, meaning, and impact. Confidence weakens, not due to attack, but due to non-compliance. Machiavellian power seems passive to the untrained eye, but it is selective engagement. Reactionlessness is discipline. Denying access is intentional. Silence is not avoidance. It collapses the game under its weight. Provocation requires participation. Without it, the provoker is exposed. Non-response shifts the psychological burden. The enemy must manage uncertainty. Silence mirrors them. They project motives, imagine strategies, and fill gaps with fear. This internal noise leads to overextension. Overextension causes errors. Machiavelli recognized that adversaries defeat themselves when clarity is removed. Confusion invites mistakes faster than resistance ever could. Refusing to react also safeguards internal authority. You remain centered. Your choices are deliberate, not rushed. Your actions follow intention. This gap between stimulus and behavior forms the essence of dominance. When you act based on intention rather than impulse, control naturally consolidates. No announcement is needed. Authority becomes evident through steady conduct, not through display. Another result opponents rarely anticipate is that when reactions vanish, interest fades. Manipulation depends on response. If no response occurs, effort feels wasted. The adversary either escalates openly or withdraws completely. Both outcomes favor you. Escalation reveals intent. Withdrawal confirms loss of influence. Either way, leverage shifts in your favor. Machiavelli cautioned that those who expose their inner workings invite interference. Reaction exposes process. Stillness conceals it. The one who remains unmoved cannot be controlled. This is why refusing to react is not weakness, it is protection. It establishes distance between you and external pressure. Distance creates freedom. Freedom creates choice. Authority begins where reaction ends. Use silence as a deliberate psychological tool. Silence is often misread as emptiness. In reality, it is concentrated presence without direction. Machiavelli knew that what is undefined becomes feared, and what is feared gains weight. Silence removes points of reference. Without verbal signal, emotional cue, or visible intent, the opposing mind turns inward. The pressure does not vanish, it grows. Speech releases tension. Silence preserves it. Opponents rely on resolution because resolution restores perceived control. When you speak, even briefly, you anchor interpretation. When you stay silent, interpretation spirals. The adversary begins assigning meaning where none exists. That meaning is shaped by their own insecurities, not your intention. This is how imbalance emerges. Silence operates as an active force because it removes orientation. Without orientation, timing collapses. Enemies hesitate, act wrong, lie, or withdraw too soon. Each step exposes reliance on feedback. Machiavelli understood that uncertainty weakens resolve more than opposition. A visible enemy can be prepared for. An unreadable one cannot. Communication has a hierarchy. Those who speak first often respond. Those who speak last define reality. Those who remain silent exist outside the frame. Silence lifts you above engagement. You are no longer participating, you are being observed. Observation shifts influence. The observed becomes reactive. The observer becomes central. Machiavelli said, "Whoever causes another to gain power ruins himself. Silence prevents others from gaining power over you. Offering nothing denies advantage. Withholding explanation blocks leverage. Silence interrupts the transfer of authority that speech can unconsciously create. The human mind resists open loops. It seeks closure. Silence creates a loop with no exit. This unresolved state generates internal noise. Questions repeat. Assumptions multiply. The enemy preoccupies themselves with interpretation instead of action. While they construct meaning, you remain unmoved. This pressure grows over time. Silence does not require reinforcement, it compounds naturally. The longer it lasts, the heavier it becomes. Enemies may initially read it as weakness, but the illusion quickly fades when no collapse occurs. Confusion shifts into doubt, doubt into anxiety, and anxiety into exposure. Silence also removes emotional symmetry. When one side exerts urgency, while the other remains still, imbalance is clear. Emotional energy without return feels humiliating. The adversary subconsciously realizes they invest in someone who does not reciprocate. This awareness erodes confidence. Strategic silence is not retreat, it is positioning. You are present without engagement, available without access, visible without explanation. This position is hard to challenge because it has no surface. Attacks slide off, questions go unanswered. Pressure rebounds to the source. Machiavelli advised avoiding unnecessary explanation because explanation invites judgment. Silence invites projection. Projection exposes the adversary's inner landscape. Fears emerge through speculation. Priorities surface through escalation. You learn without showing yourself. When silence is consistent, it shifts status. Others adjust around it. Conversations slow. Expectations change. Your stillness becomes a reference point. This is psychological gravity. It does not demand attention, it draws it. Silence also protects timing. Words lock you into moments. Silence keeps options open. Speaking after absence carries weight. Absence sharpens presence. Machiavelli knew scarcity increases value. Silence creates scarcity of access. Discipline is essential. Silence must be intentional, not reactive. It is refusal to resolve uncertainty with clarity. Mastered silence becomes pressure without aggression, influence without movement, control without effort. The unreadable individual becomes the center of reaction. Others orbit, adjust, and overthink. You remain unchanged. That is the strength of silence. Controlling time is the next key to managing outcomes. Time is the most underestimated tool of power. Machiavelli observed that whoever sets the pace controls behavior. Urgency is rarely natural. It is manufactured to compress judgment, weaken discernment, and force early commitment. When speed increases artificially, mistakes follow. Those who accept imposed tempo surrender control without realizing it. Adversaries create haste to limit options. Rapid decisions feel decisive, yet they serve the initiator. Speed favors the one who prepared earlier. The one who rushes is already behind. Machiavelli warned that impulsive action pleases adversaries because it replaces strategy with momentum. Momentum can be redirected, intention cannot. Delay is not indecision, it is disruption. Slowing the exchange fractures expectation. Enemies plan sequences based on predicted response times. When those windows collapse, structure fails. They must wait. Waiting transfers emotional weight. Anticipation breeds tension. Tension clouds judgment. Asymmetry in timing establishes hierarchy. Those who wait signal independence. Those who demand immediacy reveal need. Need creates vulnerability. Machiavelli recognized that authority appears calm because it does not fear loss through delay. Anxiety belongs to those worried about losing advantage. Refusing urgency destabilizes opponents because it leaves their strategy incomplete. Pressure accumulates without release. Extended time increases emotional investment, clouding judgment. Decisions become reactive. The longer they wait, the more they desire resolution. This desire creates leverage. Long pauses followed by concise action amplify impact. When the response finally comes, it feels deliberate and calculated. Machiavelli knew perception outweighs effort. A measured response signals dominance regardless of content. Adversaries attempt to control pace via deadlines, demands, and implied consequences, relying on fear of loss. Ignoring these imposed timelines redefines stakes. Loss becomes theirs. Initiatives they tried to secure vanish. Their urgency exposes reliance. Letting situations mature provides strategic insight. Early movement reveals little, late movement reveals patterns. Waiting allows observation without revealing anything. The enemy shows impatience, shifts tone, and exposes priorities. Each adjustment reveals motive. Patience allows full observation before engagement. Time also protects positioning. Immediate action locks context. Delay keeps options flexible. Changing circumstances favor delayed actors. Early movers defend choices, draining power. Waiting preserves optionality. Machiavelli noted that rulers who rushed lost authority, appearing reactive. Those who waited appeared sovereign. Sovereignty shows through calm pacing. Calm pacing communicates command over outcomes. Control. Ling time neutralizes manipulation. Manipulation depends on synchronized timing. Disrupted timing weakens influence. The manipulator misaligns pressure. Mistiming erodes credibility. The psychological cost of waiting is often underestimated. Waiting creates internal tension. Thoughts circle endlessly. Confidence slowly diminishes. Opponents begin doubting their assumptions. Doubt triggers overcorrection. Overcorrection exposes weakness. This sequence happens naturally, without your direct involvement. The discipline to manage time demands internal balance. It requires patience for uncertainty. Most people hurry because silence feels awkward. Machiavellian power endures discomfort because it recognizes its utility. Discomfort transferred becomes leverage gained. When you set the pace, you determine when meaning emerges. You decide when action matters. You choose when engagement begins. This control removes the need for force. Mastery over time silently reshapes interaction. Repeat this affirmation quietly to yourself. I control the pace. Number 5. Disrupt the enemy's expectations. Opponents prepare for routine, not truth. Machiavelli understood that anticipation relies on pattern, not reality. The mind craves shortcuts, and repetition builds those shortcuts. Once a pattern is assumed, planning feels safe. Safety dulls alertness. When an enemy believes they know your behavior, critical thinking ceases. This is the opening. Expectation acts like a script. It predicts when you will respond, how you will react, and the form resistance will take. That script becomes their crutch. They lean on it unknowingly. When behavior diverges from that script, confusion replaces certainty. Confusion disrupts execution. Failed execution creates vulnerability. Predictability is not always weakness. Machiavelli never recommended constant chaos, he advised control. Consistency at times reduces suspicion and lowers friction. Stability can serve as camouflage. Danger arises when consistency becomes identity. Once behavior is assumed fixed, it can be exploited repeatedly. The enemy stops adapting, repeating what worked before. Breaking expectation is not randomness. Randomness has no purpose. Strategic deviation is precise. It happens at critical moments, not constantly. Under pressure, when a predictable response is anticipated, deviation has maximum effect. The enemy acts based on assumption. When that assumption fails, hesitation occurs. Hesitation fractures momentum. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince should not depart from good if possible, but know how to enter into evil when forced by necessity." This was strategy, not morality. The lesson is adaptability under pressure. When expectation locks behavior, flexibility becomes dominance. Opponents also rely on emotional prediction. They anticipate irritation, justification, retreat, or escalation. When none occur, their model collapses. They must rebuild understanding mid-interaction. Rebuilding consumes attention. Attention taken from action leads to mistakes. This is how failed expectation creates advantage. There is also a psychological effect. When a forecast fails, doubt emerges. Doubt weakens future predictions. Confidence erodes slowly. Once doubt sets in, even correct assumptions feel uncertain. This instability lingers. One broken expectation affects the next encounter. Strategic inconsistency disrupts manipulation too. Manipulation depends on predictable cause and effect. When actions fail to produce expected reactions, influence fades. The manipulator loses calibration. Over-adjustment exposes intent. Exposure removes subtlety. Machiavelli understood that appearing simple while being complex is power. Opponents relax when they believe they understand you. That relaxation is dangerous for them. When complexity appears unexpectedly, response time collapses. They are forced to think under pressure rather than act. Expectation governs escalation as well. Opponents gauge their limits based on predicted resistance. If resistance shifts unexpectedly or disappears, escalation fails. They advance too far or retreat too early. Both errors create openings. Breaking expectation doesn't require dramatic action. Absence can suffice. Restraint can be the deviation. Calm may replace intensity. Delay may replace speed. Contrast is key. The larger the gap between expectation and reality, the stronger the psychological impact. There is a deeper effect. When opponents cannot predict, they become cautious. Caution slows initiative. Loss of initiative transfers advantage. They wait. They hesitate. They observe instead of acting. In that pause, control shifts. Machiavelli valued adaptability because rigid minds collapse under change. Flexibility keeps power mobile. Mobility prevents traps. When behavior is unpredictable, strategy cannot be finalized. Opponents remain incomplete. Expectation comforts the mind. Removing it creates instability. Instability weakens structure. Weak structure ends dominance. By controlling when and how expectations are broken, you shape the psychological terrain. Once the opponent realizes they no longer understand you, the balance shifts. They no longer play the game they prepared for. They respond to one they cannot define. Number 6. Deny closure to destabilize. Human minds cannot tolerate unfinished narratives. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology defined it. People seek resolution because it restores order. Withheld order maintains tension. Tension consumes attention, drains energy, and distorts judgment. Denying closure is not cruelty, it is strategic withdrawal. Opponents do not always seek victory. Often they seek explanation, reaction, or recognition. Any conclusion reassures them that influence persists. When you remove access without explanation, the loop remains open. An open loop is not neutral. It draws focus inward repeatedly. Opponents replay events, searching for meaning that does not exist. Anger burns fast, confusion lingers, anger releases energy, uncertainty traps it. Machiavelli understood that punishment can end conflict, but ambiguity prolongs dominance. When there is no clear ending, the mind works long after interaction ends. This continued effort benefits only the absent party. Closure restores hierarchy. Explaining, justifying, or clarifying acknowledges the other party's authority. Denying closure removes that elevation. It communicates without words that their understanding is unnecessary. Irrelevance destabilizes more than opposition. Silence after engagement differs from silence before it. After engagement, absence feels intent. Ional, final but unexplained. This creates a void where meaning should exist. The enemy fills that void with self-generated narratives, often turning inward. Doubt replaces certainty. Machiavelli knew that those who crave resolution are easy to control. They chase answers and reveal desperation. Each attempt to regain access exposes need. Need reverses power. The one seeking closure is already beneath the one denying it. There is a temptation to resolve matters neatly, finish conversations, explain motives, clarify misunderstandings. That temptation stems from empathy, not strategy. Machiavellian power resists because clarity benefits the listener more than the speaker. Denying clarity keeps leverage intact. Once closure is withheld, consistency matters. One explanation destroys the effect. The mind resets, the loop closes, control vanishes. Denial must be full and sustained. Partial closure invites renewed pursuit. Full denial ends it silently. Unresolved situations create obsession. Obsession narrows perception. Narrow perception leads to error. Opponents interpret unrelated events as signals. They overanalyze, misread neutrality as intent. This weakens effective action elsewhere. Focus becomes misallocated. Machiavelli understood that power does not need presence, it needs impact. Denying closure allows impact to persist without effort. Opponents continue acting alone. You remain untouched. This asymmetry is dominance. There is protection in denial. Refusing explanation shields internal reasoning. Motives remain private. Intent remains hidden. Concealment prevents counter-strategy. What cannot be understood cannot be anticipated. Closure allows emotional release. Release enables movement. Denial traps emotion. Trapped emotion seeks outlet. Outlet often shows as escalation, overreach, or exposure. Each reveals more than intended. Each weakens position. Indifference is often mistaken for apathy. In strategy, indifference is insulation. It removes incentive. Without incentive, manipulation collapses. Opponents cannot progress because there is nothing to respond to.